KWT slaying.
What if the truth was never lost, only buried? For centuries, historians, scholars, and even colonial records have confirmed what many tried to silence. The original Israelites were a black people scattered across continents but never erased. Their skin was dark, their customs ancient, and their covenant with Yah eternal. This journey uncovers how the Spanish and Portuguese Jews, described as dark-skinned, Semitic, shared one bloodline. Chased by the Inquisition, many fled to Portugal, then beyond, preserving their heritage across borders. But the story doesn't end in Iberia. Across from West Africa, black Jews built synagogues, kept Torah, and passed down the laws of Moses. The Limba in southern Africa, the Igbo in Nigeria, the Beta Israel in Ethiopia, tribes across the continent boldly declared, "We are the children of Israel." These aren't isolated claims. These are voices rising from the dust, connected by oral histories, Torah traditions, and the unbroken rhythm of their identity. No such legacy exists among European Jews. No centuries of tribal witness, no matching traditions, no trace of ancient covenant keeping. Maps, art, and archaeology tell the same story. The Israelites were scattered, enslaved, and displaced, but never lost. The world always knew who they were. Their presence was visible, their customs alive, their story intact. This book doesn't speculate. It confirms the Israelites were black, bound by blood, culture, and covenant to the Most High. This is not just history, it's restoration. The truth was never destroyed, only buried beneath centuries of deception. Get your copy of They Always Knew We Were Israelites today, available now on Amazon.com.
Salama family, salama, how y'all doing today? Hope you're blessed and highly favored. So one thing I want to do is, before I get started, is give you a caveat, right? And when I say that, I'm talking more about, these end time prophecies that's happening and all the things that's occurring. Like, I don't know if y'all heard of the screw tapeworm that's in cattle in Texas now. There's all kind of plagues happening, all kind of crazy stuff going on. And also, as I mentioned in the previous show, is the falling away happening in the Israelite community. And, one of the things, it's sort of, you can sort of recognize the obvious falling away, right? Like denying the New Testament, right? Denying Yahushua as Messiah. That's sort of the obvious ones. But the less obvious falling away is denying the deity of the Messiah. Now, here's a post that I put out and dealing with the spirit of Antichrist. And a lot of people don't realize that the spirit of Antichrist is denying the deity of the Messiah. I bet you didn't know that, did you? Give me a 1 if you knew that the spirit of Antichrist is denying the deity of the Messiah. Give me a 2 if you didn't. Because a lot of people don't realize denying the deity of the Messiah is the spirit of Antichrist. And we are in the last days. Okay. So if you look here, it says in 1 John 4:2, every spirit that confesses that Yahushua, the Messiah, is come in the flesh is of God. Verse 3, but every spirit that does not acknowledge Yahushua, which is what? Come in the flesh, is not from God. This is what? The spirit of Antichrist. Now, pay close attention here. It says the phrase Yahushua came in the flesh shows that something more than ordinary human birth happened. Every man is born in flesh. So John would have no reason to make the test of truth unless Yahushua existed before taking on flesh. Yahushua existed before taking on flesh. This lines up with John 1:1 and John 1:14, where the word was Elohim and the word was made flesh. It also agrees with 1 Timothy 3:16, which says God was manifest in the flesh. John is not merely saying Yahushua had a human body. He's testifying to the mystery of Yahuwah revealed in flesh. That is why denying this is dangerous, because it does not simply misunderstand Yahushua's humanity. It attacks the identity of the Messiah himself. So according to scripture, if you do not believe that Yahushua is Yahuwah in flesh, according to 1 John 4:2, you're dealing with the spirit of Antichrist. I didn't say it. Scripture says it. Now, we're going to move on. I just had to get that warning out there because there's a lot of y'all that's dealing with the spirit of the Antichrist. I ain't going to lie. It ain't funny, but it's true. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about this find that is in Ethiopia, right? Which, once again, I've already proved it to myself 100%. That's the location. But, I like to share new findings that, come up. And we're going to talk about it and, the importance of it and how the Middle East, the so-called Jerusalem, the fake Jerusalem in the Middle East, right, cannot be the place, right? It just cannot. It has no historical value whatsoever. But let's continue. So this is the Adi Kaweh, the Hebrew inscription, and the Ethiopian highlands. The Adi Kaweh Wukro discoveries in Tigray, Ethiopia, deserve far more attention than they receive. These finds bring together ancient incense, burners, sacrificial altars, blood channels, pillar-like memorial stones, and inscriptions written in South Semitic script. Now, one of the things I want to emphasize right quick is that, in my opinion, a lot of the talk that has to deal with that, let's say, deal with languages and scripts is a misdirection. Why? Because they misclassify things. In my opinion, I'm not an expert. I'm not a linguist. But, when they classify things as Aramaic versus Hebrew versus Ge'ez versus Semitic, right? All of that is a facade. It's a categorization that is full of deception, right? So one inscription in particular, often called the Second Sabaean inscription at Adi Kaweh, has major implications because it appears to mention both Sabaeans and Hebrews in the same ancient Ethiopian highland setting. Now, if you read my book, a lot of this stuff will make sense, right? It validates what my book already says, right? So Adi Kaweh is a small hilltop village in the Tigray region of northern Ethiopia, right? It holds massive significance in biblical archaeology. The history of Queen of Sheba, right? They admit that. They admit the Ark of the Covenant, got a history with that, right? In local Tigrinian language, the name translates to village of rocks. Now, how come there's all of these biblical scenarios in this land, but none in the Middle East? Come on, we ought to be grown-up children now. Well, let's say not children, but adults, grown from children to adults, where we can see these things for what they are. They cannot have Jerusalem be in Africa, because then guess what? Then that means the Jews are Africans. I ain't no cotton picking African. That's the FBA Israelites, right? So we had these Sabaean inscriptions, right? And the archaeologists discovered ancient Sabaean stone and incense burners. And that's what we're going to talk about today, this incense burner. And, you know, a lot of people will ignore these things, right? And like, for instance, you know, I've had some Gentiles, they were like attacking Tail Ministries and stuff on Facebook. I didn't even see it personally. And, you know, they never attack the teachings. They never attack the historical evidence. They never attack anything, you know, let's say from either hermeneutic or historical viewpoint. And why is that? Because they have nothing, right? It's nothing but racism. It's nothing but discrimination. It's nothing but hatred of black folks, right? And so we got to understand, for us, if you see what's happening today, right? Like the deletion of one of our young, what's his name? Cassus, I think, the young kid who got killed. We have to separate from these folks. I know y'all don't want to hear that, some of y'all, you know, because y'all love Babylon, right? But Israel got to separate. But that's what we did before. That's what the Most High called us to do. Why? Because we were what? A peculiar people, a called out people, set apart for the work of Yahuwah. It's not till Christianity came, then everybody was the same and everybody universal and we all should get along, right? Yeah, Cyrus, thank you, Sister Talisha. You know, I'm like, they keep killing our people. I'm sick of it personally. But, you know, the Most High going to step in very soon, in my opinion. But Israel, you know, whether they sleep or woke, they're not waking up, and, you know, until the Most High forces them to wake up. There's a few of us, a remnant, who are awakened, right? And we have been planting the seeds, right? One water and Yah gives the increase. So that's just the way it is. But I've come to the conclusion that, you know, it's not going to be by us forcefully uniting. It's going to be divine, right? So let's continue. So this matters because the inscription is dated by Bernard Lehman to approximately 800 BCE, placing it in the biblical First Temple period. Lehman's paper identifies the object as the second incense burner of Adi Kaweh, mentioning red Sabaeans and black Hebrew. The table in the paper gives the key line as MLKW Damat, DMT, SBHY, which is Sabaean, WBRHY, which is Hebrew, right? So with notes connecting SBHY to Sabaeans and BRHY / BHRY to Hebrew. Now, Hebrew, right, that don't look like Hebrew to you because, you know, you're looking for the vowel points, which would be like Hebrew, right? So here's the script here, right? It says the original states SBYH Sabaeans, which Schneider says was incorrect and should have been written on the first incense burner. You know, whatever that is. I think that's Gaiz, right? BRHY, the original states BHRY Hebrew, which Schneider says was incorrect and should have been written like that, whatever. Okay. So basically they said that it's a Sabaean script, but the word is Hebrew. And this is what I was saying in the beginning. In my opinion, there's no difference between Hebrew. There's no difference really between Gaiz other than dialect. Some people disagree. The expert linguist, I'm sure, would disagree. But to me, it's a dialectical issue. And the reason I say that, because even when you read Gaiz, right, and you interpret Gaiz and, translate Gaiz, a lot of the words are similar to Hebrew, right? Same meanings, same word, different script, right? So I've come to the conclusion that it's all a game. That's my opinion. So when we say, oh, this is Hebrew, or, oh, this is Aramaic, or, oh, this is Arabic, or, oh, you know what I'm saying? A lot of these languages are just a different dialect of it. And different cultures took it and they transformed and became their own classified languages. But the root, right, is a Canaanite base anyway, right? Hebrew is from Canaanite anyway. It's a Canaanite base anyway. So it's all a facade, right? It's misdirection, misapplication, right? Not telling you the true history of why these languages started to diverge. So what an incense burner is a ritual object used to burn aromatic substances such as frankincense, myrrh, resins, woods, herbs, or sacred blends. In ancient temple systems, incense was not decoration. Incense marked prayer, purification, sanctity, priestly service, and covenant worship. In biblical worship, incense belonged to the formal priestly system. So this is the stones, right? The incense burners, right? So incense burners at Kaweh being cleaned of recent decorative white paint 2009. All right. So this is the incense burner that we're talking about. How come we don't find these things in the Middle East, family? Some of y'all still believe the Middle East our land. I'll never understand why. But we find all of these archaeological evidence where? In Ethiopia. What are the odds? So Exodus 30, verses 7 and 8. And Aaron shall burn thereon sweet incense every morning. When he dresseth the lamps, he shall burn incense upon it. And when Aaron lighted the lamps at even, he shall burn incense upon it. A perpetual incense before Yahuwah throughout your generations. What an incense burner is. Continue. So, when inscribed incense burners appear in ancient Ethiopia, attached to altars, sacrifice channels, and Semitic inscriptions, the discovery lands directly inside the world of biblical style rituals. So we see a biblical environment. Not only do we have a history of Hebrews in the land, right? What we call Ethiopia today. It used to be called, Abyssinia, right? Axum, stuff like that, right? We have all of this stuff in these biblical rituals and styles and artifacts. It continues, right? I don't see how anybody can even disagree that this is the land, right? Especially after you read my book. So the script image and why it matters. So here's the incense and here's the script. So Sabaean script on the second incense burner. This image shows the copied South Semitic script from the second incense burner. The characters are usually called Sabaean because the script belongs to the ancient South Arabian South Semitic writing family. So it's just a classification. I'm convinced that it is just another form of Hebrew. Call it a Canaanite, whatever you want, Canaanite language, whatever you want to call it. Afro-Asiatic, all right? They classify all of this stuff. That label describes the script tradition. It does not automatically define the ethnicity or covenant identity of the people using the script. So we have these different scripts, which you would expect based upon what the Bible tells us about the nation of Israel and what was happening during that time. But we're going to get there. So this distinction matters. A people can use the dominant prestige script of a region without becoming a different nation. Later, Africans used Arabic script, which I would say is another form of Hebrew. Europeans used Latin script, and many ancient peoples used imperial writing systems without losing their own identity. In the same way, a Hebrew or Israelite population in the Ethiopian highlands could use a Sabaean style script while preserving Israelite identity. I'm of the opinion that a lot of these scripts, a lot of these languages are variations of a Canaanite language, which is what Hebrew is, which is what Aramaic is, and all of these things, right? So transliteration table for the second incense burner. This table gives the key line MLKWDMT. They pronounce that DMOT, right? SBHY Sabaean, BRHY, which is Hebrew, right? So the important word is WBRHY, especially the core consonants, BRH and BRHY. This is extremely close to the Hebrew ethnonym, Ibri, right? So that's where we start putting the vowels back in, right? So BRHY is without the vowels. That's the consonants. Ibri is with the vowels put in there. So ancient Semitic writing often records consonants more prominently than vowels. Can we say Paleo-Hebrew? When vowels are removed, Ibri and BRHY sit in the same linguistic field. The difference does not break the argument. It strengthens the need for comparison across related Semitic languages. Hebrew, Sabaean, and Ge'ez are all Semitic languages. Now, if they're all Semitic languages, right? Hebrew, Sabaean, and Ge'ez, they're all Semitic languages, then their foundation is Semites or Semitic language. Therefore, they have a root belief system in term. Well, let me rephrase that. They have a root language system with similar words, similar meanings, right? So Hebrew, Sabaean, and Gayas are all Semitic languages. They share consonantal roots, grammatical patterns, and overlapping religious vocabulary. They got a lot of the same meanings. That means the inscription should not be framed as Sabaean versus Hebrew, as if those are two sealed off worlds. The better understanding is this. Sabaean may describe the script, political culture, or regional prestige layer. Hebrew may describe the people or covenant identity inside that mixed highland civilization. That is exactly what one should expect in ancient Israelite society. Well, why would we expect this in the Israelite society? Biblical Israel was not an isolated ethnic camp, sealed off from surrounding peoples. Foreigners dwelled among Israel, attached themselves to Israel, and lived under Israel's law. Exodus 12:49, one law shall be to him that is homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourneth among you. So you would expect to have these mixture of Semitic languages. Numbers 15:15, one ordinance shall be both for you of the congregation and also for the stranger that sojourneth with you. A mixed Demat, Sabaean Hebrew ritual culture in Ethiopia fits the biblical pattern. Israelite identity could exist alongside attached foreigners, regional allies, and related Semitic peoples. The presence of Sabaean forms does not cancel Hebrew identity. It creates the expected mixed cultural setting. So this is what we should see. This is what we should expect, not just Hebrew by itself, but this mixture of, let's say, a Semitic languages, as they like to refer to it, or Canaanite language, right? That they like to refer to. We should expect a mixture of this. Why? Because we got different ethnic groups, right? And it's sort of like we all speak English, right? You go to New Orleans, you speaking a whole different English. Yeah, baby, over there, baby, on the neutral ground. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Then you go to New York, you got a different dialect, right? It's still English. They would classify some of those as different languages. This image shows the physical incense burners, as I showed in the beginning, at Kaweh being cleaned of later decorative white paint. The image is important because it moves the discussion away from theory alone. These are real stone ritual objects, not abstract symbols on the page. So the whole point being is, okay, we have the incense burners, we have the scripts, but now we have the scripts and the incense burners within a religious context. Not only do we have it in a religious context, we have it in a society that has a history of having Hebrews there, or Israelites, right? So the physical incense burners, Adekawe continue. The stones show pedestal style ritual construction, carved decoration, altar-like form, and a clear connection to sacrificial temple activity. These objects belong to the same sacred environment as the inscriptions. That gives Hebrew reading real archaeological weight. So it gives more importance or weight to the idea that it is Hebrew. That BRHY is Hebrew, right? Because it's not separate from the incense. It's not separate from the rituals. It's not separate from the altars. It's not separate from the sacrificial system. So key points. The Hebrew reading gains more importance because it appears in a real ritual complex. It is one thing to say a word on a page might mean Hebrew. It is much stronger to say a word that may mean Hebrew appears on an actual incense burner from an ancient sacrificial site in Ethiopia, surrounded by altars, blood channels, and Semitic religious architecture. That does not mean the photo alone proves everything. It means the physical context supports the interpretation and makes the Hebrew reading harder to dismiss as abstract speculation. So it gives validation to the interpretation that it means Hebrew. So the blood collection channel. So here we see collection for blood from the Sabaean altar sacrifices at Wukro 1 site at Kaweh, University of Mekelle History Department, 2009. So collection for blood from sacrifices at Wukro 1 Adi Kaweh, this image shows what the caption identifies as a blood collection feature from altar sacrifices at the Wukro 1 site, Adi Kaweh. The structure appears to include a basin and channel system. That is important because biblical sacrifice centered on blood handling, altar service, and priestly ritual. Blood was not treated casually in Israelite worship. Blood belonged to covenant, atonement, purification, and altar procedure. This does not mean every sacrificial altar in Ethiopia was automatically Israelite. The stronger point is cumulative. When blood channels, incense burners, Semitic inscriptions, Hebrew associated wording, and Israelite oral tradition all appear in the same region, the pattern becomes too specific to dismiss. This is Israelite worship. This is Israelite artifacts. When all of these things come together and form this pattern of Israelite beliefs. So the large altar at Wukro 1, Sabaean altar at Wukro 1, this image shows a large stone altar from the Wukro 1 Adi Kaweh area. The altar includes a central upper basin, carved architectural panels, an inscription band, and a channel described as connected with blood from sacrifices. So here we see the Sabaean altar at Wukro 1 site, Adi Kaweh. Lo Yodit's alleged grave with channel on right from sacrifices. So Yodit, also called Gudit or Judith, is the legendary 10th century Ethiopian queen, often blamed in Ethiopian tradition for overthrowing or severely weakening the Aksumite dynasty. Some traditions connect her with Beta Israel, Israelite kingdom of Simeon, while others portray her differently. So her exact identity is debated. In this image, Yodit's alleged grave means the site is locally or traditionally associated with her burial, not proven beyond dispute. The Adi Kaweh Wukro excavation report identifies the place as Makaber Gaweh, and the altar shown is a Sabaean altar found beneath or near that alleged grave area. Once again, don't be deceived by the classification of a Sabaean script or a Sabaean altar, right? They include all of that. But remember, Israel had foreigners living amongst them. You had Israelite culture, Israelite traditions mixed with foreigners who became, let's say for all practical purposes, converts. So the large altar at Wukro 1 continued. The altar proved that the Adi Kaweh was not just a writing site, it was a ritual site. It had structured worship, formal stone architecture, inscriptional dedication, and sacrificial infrastructure. This supports the idea that Adi Kaweh may represent a regional high place or sanctuary, not necessarily the temple site. Okay, so we got to realize that some of these places could have been sanctuaries or synagogues or, high places, things like that, right? Because before Yahuwah gave Israel the command to only go to Jerusalem, Israel had high places in different areas until the Most High said the only place you can worship is in Jerusalem. How come we don't find that in the Middle East? So Yeha cannot fit the biblical location of Jerusalem or the temple. Yeha is an important pre-Aksumite site, but Yeha does not fit the biblical location of Jerusalem or the central temple. Yeha belongs in the conversation as a related Demat Sabaean cultural center or synagogue, not as the final location of Zion or the house of Yahuwah. Now, this distinction is very important. Yeha is famous for its monumental temple architecture and South Semitic cultural setting. That makes Yeha valuable for understanding the world around ancient Ethiopian highland worship. But the biblical temple must fit a much more specific profile, as you see in my book. It must connect to the chosen place, Zion, the royal city, the Davidic line, priestly centralization, and the national memory of Israel. Now, how come we don't find this stuff in the Middle East? How come what we find is Catholic churches and a Gihon spring and not a Gihon river? I'm just asking, right? So Yeha does not carry that full biblical profile. Yeha looks like a major regional temple center or synagogue in the broader highland civilization. It helps prove that ancient Ethiopia had powerful Semitic temple culture during the correct period, but it does not satisfy the requirement for Jerusalem. So people who say Yeha is Jerusalem, they don't know what they're talking about, okay? They have no idea. They haven't done the research. The added Kaweh Wukro material works differently. It contains sacrificial systems, incense burners, inscriptions, and the debated Hebrew term BRHY. It strengthens the larger Ethiopian highlands model without forcing Yeha into a role it cannot carry. In other words, Yeha supports the ancient highland sacred world. Adikawe supplies sharper Israelite evidence. The true Jerusalem must be identified by the full biblical pattern, not by the biggest surviving temple ruin. And that's what I got in my book that shows you the full pattern, that shows you without a doubt that Jerusalem is in the highlands of Ethiopia. I mean, sorry, y'all can't win. Y'all can't win if y'all still trying to push the Middle East. You can't, right? Incense burner 2. The Hebrew inscription, the image may be the most important of the set. It shows the inscription bearing incense burner itself. The inscription is not a random scratch. It is formal, repeated, and organized. The object is ritual. The context is sacrificial. The date is early. The language is Semitic. The debated word resembles Hebrew. That combination carries weight. The inscription BRHY form is close enough to Hebrew to demand serious attention, especially because vowels are not the controlling issue in ancient Semitic inscriptional writing. The consonantal structure is the heart of the matter. The Beta Israel oral tradition. The oral history of Beta Israel places them in Ethiopia, including the Simeon Mountains region, for over 2,000 years. That places their self-understanding at least within the Second Temple era and possibly points to an older Israelite presence. So why all of this stuff adds up to the same location, but we can't get this kind of evidence in the Middle East? This oral tradition matters because it is not standing alone. It now sits beside early Semitic inscriptions, First Temple era incense burners, sacrificial altar systems, blood collection channels, pillar traditions, and the debated BRHY Hebrew reading. Is it all coincidence? That creates convergence. Oral memory and archaeology begin pointing in the same direction. Now, the pillars and Absalom's memorial pattern. Now, I'm going to show you a clip from one of my older videos. It's just 5 minutes, well, almost 6 minutes, of the Absalom pillar for those who are new. So the standing stones and pillar-like structures tied to these sites also deserve attention. Biblical Israel used stones and pillars as witnesses, memorials, and name-preserving markers. So I'm going to show y'all that clip. It's like 6 minutes, and we'll come back to this. Absalom. Now, this is important, family. This is important. In 2 Samuel 18:18, Absalom creates a pillar for himself. During his lifetime, Absalom had taken a pillar and erected it in the King's Valley as a monument to himself, for he thought, I have no Absalom son to carry on the memory of my name. He named the pillar after himself, and it is called Absalom's monument to this day. I told you the attributes got to be there, family. The attributes got to be there. Where you going with this, Jacob? Stick with me. Why did Absalom create this pillar for himself? If you read the context of this scripture, you will see that he created this pillar because he was going to die. He was going to die. During his lifetime, what? While he was alive, Absalom, what? Had taken a pillar and what? Erected it for himself while he was alive. Why does it matter while he was alive? Because he was going to die. He had no offspring. He had no offspring. So he said in the King's Valley, he's going to
build a pillar because he don't have a son to build the pillar for him since he's a king. So Absalom going to build this pillar for himself. So if you read the context of the scripture, you will see that he created this pillar because he was going to die and because he had no son to carry on his name. The kings erected pillars throughout the Israelite empire. These are like headstones for graves or markings of great events. In Genesis 35:14, we see our forefather Jacob put up a pillar where Yah had talked to him. Jacob set up a stone pillar at the place where Yah had talked with him, and he poured out a drink offering on it. He also poured oil on it. Why don't we see these pillars in the Middle East? Come on now. Why don't we see pillars in the Middle East? If our forefathers built pillars, where are they? Where are they? They talk about the Valley of the Kings in the modern Israel, but there's no pillars. Why don't we see these pillars in the Middle East? We talk about generations and generations of kings, generations and generations of people, generations of elite. Where are the pillars? So why don't we see the pillars in the Middle East location of the so-called Jerusalem? Why are all of these biblical things in modern Ethiopia? It is because it is the true Jerusalem. I told you I'm 100% convinced. It ain't going to convince me otherwise. How is Jerusalem in the land of Ham? That's like asking, why does the sun shine? That had nothing to do with nothing. Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology. You see this pillar on the ground, family? There's a bunch of pillars all over Ethiopia. Why? Because that was part of our culture. It's all in the Bible. Axumite stele, true treasures of human craftsmanship. The organization and technological skills of Axumites were represented by the construction of stele. These monuments were created in line of older African traditions and made of single pieces of local granite. They were cut out and transported from quarries located at least 4 kilometers away, Gabadra Hill, to the location where they needed to be erected. In most cases, the stele, can we say pillars, mark elite and royal burial tombs. What? In most cases, the stele mark what? Elite and royal burial tombs. What did Absalom say? I need to create my own pillar because I don't have no son to build one for me. Larger stele appeared to decorate the graves of the Axumite kings. Can we say Valley of the Kings? How come we don't see those quote unquote stele or pillars in modern Israel? The monoliths are spread over multiple terrains, including fields in the northern and southeastern sides of the city. The Gudite stele, or can we say pillar? The Gudite stele field and the central stele park, the latter began to emerge as a regional ceremonial and settlement center around 100 AD, 100 AD, and houses the finest manufactured and decorated monoliths of Axum. Can we say Israel? Can we say Israel? Absalom was a king. He had a pillar made for him. Or can we say stele? It ain't over there in the Middle East. Stele, an upright stone slab or column typically bearing a commemorative inscription or relief design, often serving as a gravestone. That's why we get these little stones over our little graves. Israelite tradition. A pillar, a tall vertical structure of stone, wood, or metal used as a support for a building or an ornament or monument.
So, fam, that shows you that, all of these things that we're seeing is proving what I've been saying about the location of the real Jerusalem, right? Not the fake place in the Middle East, which is the setup for the Antichrist, right? There's a lot of setups for the Antichrist. Let's see here. Oh, I ended up closing out. All right, so 2 Samuel 18:18. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and reared up for himself a pillar which is in the king's dale. For he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. And he called the pillar after his own name, and it is called unto this day Absalom place. So what we saw in Ethiopia with their pillars is the same reason that Absalom created his pillars. We don't see that in the Middle East. We don't see that in South Africa. We don't see that in the Congo, but we do see it in Ethiopia. We find so many biblical presence of cultural things in the highlands of Ethiopia that, I just don't understand why some people still hold on to the dirt. So that verse shows that pillars could function as memorial objects tied to name, memory, identity, and inheritance. When ancient Ethiopian highland sites preserved pillars alongside sacrificial altars and Semitic inscriptions, the connection to biblical Israelite tradition becomes stronger. The pillar evidence does not stand by itself. It belongs to the same pattern. So why this goes beyond coincidence? One artifact can be explained away. One inscription can be debated. One oral tradition can be minimized. One altar can be relabeled. But this case is not built on one item. The Ethiopian highlands preserve First Temple era incense burners, South Semitic inscriptions, a debated Hebrew ethnonym, sacrificial altar systems, blood channels, pillar traditions, Beta Israel oral history, and a landscape full of ancient sacred architecture, and a whole bunch of stuff that I cover in my book. The evidence increasingly validates the research model that biblical Israel must be reconsidered through the Ethiopian highlands. Yehi is part of that larger sacred world, but Yehi cannot be forced into the role of Jerusalem or the temple. The stronger case comes from the total pattern. Kaweh, Wukro, the Simeon tradition, the inscriptions, the incense, the altars, the pillars, and the survival of Israelite memory in Ethiopia. This is no longer a loose coincidence. It is a pattern demanding a serious re-examination of where biblical Israel actually stood. Personally, I don't think, my research can be refuted. I really don't. Conclusion. The second Sabaean inscription at Kaweh cannot be evaluated in isolation. It must be weighed alongside the full body of evidence already presented in True Jerusalem, the lost kingdoms of the Israelites. The incense burners, the sacrificial altar, the blood channel, the pillar traditions, the Hebrew-like BRHY Hebrew connection, the Beta Israel oral history, and the reported temple artifacts preserved around Lake Tana all belong to one larger pattern. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about the artifacts, you could go watch some of my older videos or you could buy my book. I talk about it in there as well. That pattern points back to the Ethiopian highlands. The modern Middle Eastern location promoted as Jerusalem does not present this same convergence. It does not produce the same living Israelite population continuity. It does not preserve the same Beta Israel oral tradition rooted in the Simeon Mountains for over 2,000 years. It does not contain the same highland sacred geography, the same ancient Ethiopian Semitic ritual world, the same Lake Tana temple object tradition, or the same cluster of inscriptions, incense burners, sacrificial systems, and pillar evidence tied together in one African highland landscape. So you would have a hard time trying to convince anyone, I think, at this point, right, that the dirt in the Middle East is our land. It just don't fit. But it's not that hard to understand that the Ethiopian highlands is where Jerusalem is. It's perfect. It fits everything, right? No other place in Africa brings all of these elements together either. The Ethiopian highlands preserve the people, the geography, the sacred memory, the inscription, the altar system, the incense tradition, the pillar tradition, and the temple object tradition. Lake Tana and its church are temple-related artifacts, including objects associated with biblical temple practice, add another layer to the case. These are not random similarities scattered across unrelated locations. They are concentrated signs inside the same geographic and cultural world. Like I said, if you want to understand what I'm talking about Lake Tana, you can go watch some of the older videos. I cover it there. I also cover a lot of more stuff in my book that the evidence is overwhelming. Be honest with you, I don't even see why people even debate it. This is why Kaweh matters so much. The inscription is not just an ancient text. The incense burner is not just a ritual object. The altar is not just a stone structure. The blood channel is not just an archaeological feature. Together, they show an ancient Semitic sacrificial system in the Ethiopian highlands during the biblical period in the same region where Israelite oral tradition survived among the Beta Israel. Now, the interesting thing is, and I've discussed this in older shows, how the Beta Israel location in their kingdom that was in the Simeon Mountains tie back to the warning that Yahusha gave that when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, flee to the mountains. What mountains? Right? It's the Simeon Mountains. But if you look at the Middle East, what mountains? Where did they go? Where did they flee to? You can't find it anywhere, right? Because there are no mountains. But yet there's a history of Beta Israel in the Simeon Mountains for over 2,000 years. I'm just saying. At this stage, the evidence has moved beyond coincidence. The cumulative case has reached the level of hard, serious proof within this research framework. The Ethiopian highlands contains what the supposed Middle Eastern Jerusalem lacks: a living Israelite people, ancient Semitic inscription, temple-style artifacts, sacrificial architecture, sacred geography, and historical memory preserved in one continuous land. The conclusion is direct. The discoveries at Kaweh strengthens the argument that Ethiopian highlands were not a side chapter in Israelite history. They were the center of it. In other words, this is the true land. This is the Holy Land. I just wanted to share that with y'all, some more information. I find it interesting. I like history, and I like to find out the truth. A lot of people don't like the truth, but I like the truth. So if y'all want to support us, you can. You could go to tailministry.com, click on the donations tab, and give. You can do Cash App, $TOTW 7101. Also, you can like, share, and subscribe. That helps out as well. Right, and make sure you share this with your family, because we're living in the last days. We're living in some interesting times, and I'm like I've said before in other videos, I personally think there's not much time left. A lot of deception, the falling away. I expect some other major things to happen very, very soon. So that's all I got, family. Just wanted to share that with y'all. Love y'all with the love of the Messiah. Peace and blessings, Israel. Your captivity is ending. Well, family, the wait is over. The moment has arrived where truth emerges triumphant from the shadows of history. Introducing the true Jerusalem, the lost kingdoms of the Israelites, the groundbreaking work by me, your Kaweh Veil, a journey into the past that reshapes the future. I cut through centuries of misconceptions with piercing clarity. This book delivers a compelling case packed with evidence that commands attention and gonna get some respect. Come with me for a second, family, and discover how these thrilling civilizations flourished, protected by towering highlands and sustained by advanced engineering. Some have asked, where is Jerusalem? Is it the land in the Middle East? I say no. It is in the highlands of Ethiopia. With hours of groundbreaking research, this book brings in a new revelation, and it will transform your understanding of African history and its connections to the ancient world. It's going to remove from your mind the conditioning by the Romans of what has really happened to our past. Come with me, family, to the Ethiopian highlands and find out why this is our land. Why things have been hidden and obfuscated for centuries. We are royalty, children of the Most High. What kind of land do you expect us to have? Dried up dirt in the Middle East, or land flowing with rivers? A land full of beautiful animals flowing with milk and honey. Don't miss out on this monumental unveiling. Grab your copy today and stand on the side of truth. Visit Amazon.com or www.tailministries.com to purchase your book and join your Kaweh Veil's teachings on Tail Ministries. Family, your journey to a hidden history has now begun. So family, get your copy of True Jerusalem, the Lost Kingdoms of the Israelites today. Journey to the heart of Africa,
where history and legend converge to reveal the forgotten kingdoms of the Israelites and the true location of Jerusalem.